It's time to make America just again. We need to restore justice in this country now more than ever before. And that's exactly what President-elect Trump is going to do. There will be no more double standards, no more lawfare attacks on our fellow citizens by Merrick Garland, and no more weaponization of his Department of Justice, especially not for political purposes. Getting our justice system back on the right track will be a monumental undertaking. However, it will be well worth it in the long run, and we owe it to every American citizen to address the corruption issues within our justice system. Of course, Trump will need an aggressive new attorney general in order to clean things up, and that's exactly why he has nominated now former Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz for the job. He made the announcement yesterday saying, quote, "It is my great honor to announce that Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida is hereby nominated to be the Attorney General of the United States. Matt is a deeply gifted and tenacious attorney trained at the William and Mary College of Law who has distinguished himself in Congress through his focus on achieving desperately needed reform at the Department of Justice. Few issues in America are more important than ending the partisan weaponization of our justice system. Matt will end weaponized government, protect our borders, dismantle criminal organizations, and restore Americans' badly shattered faith and confidence in the Justice Department." On the House Judiciary Committee, which performs oversight of DOJ, Matt played a key role in defeating the Russia hoax and exposing alarming and systemic government corruption and weaponization. He is a champion for the Constitution and the rule of law, end quote. Not only is Gaetz the man who led the successful ouster of former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, which was badly needed and quite historic, by the way, he's also been one of the most outspoken critics of government censorship and abuses of power. He's also a bold patriot who's not afraid to stand up to the woke mob in our nation, which is huge. And now that Republicans have a majority in the Senate, there should be no problem, theoretically, with confirming his appointment to be the next Attorney General of the greatest country in the history of human civilization. So without further ado, let's meet our new AG.
Even in the horrible circumstance where an abortion may happen, it is nothing to celebrate and it is nothing to cheer.
Mm-hmm. Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
Boom. That's exactly the mentality we need to embrace if we're going to save this country. After everything they've done to Trump, ranging from bogus impeachments and partisan indictments to enabling 2 assassination attempts on his life by spewing nasty lies about him for the better part of a decade, it's finally time to get some accountability from our own government, which is supposed to be serving us, by the way. They work for us, not the other way around. And on that note, intelligence agencies such as the CIA and even the FBI should also be held accountable for repeatedly meddling in our politics for the sole purpose of benefiting Democrats, which is why Trump has nominated former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard to be the new Director of National Intelligence. Talk about a giant repudiation of the deep state. According to Gabbard, she and her husband were put on the TSA's Quiet Skies watch list earlier this year, presumably because she had been speaking out about the dangers of the Democrat Party at great length. But now she might have a major role in the federal government. That is poetic justice right there. And Trump also shocked the deep state by nominating Florida Senator Marco Rubio to be his next Secretary of State. He made the announcement yesterday saying about it, quote, "It is my great honor to announce that Senator Marco Rubio of Florida is hereby nominated to be the United States Secretary of State. Marco is a highly respected leader and a very powerful voice for freedom. He will be a strong advocate for our nation, a true friend to our allies, and a fearless warrior who will never back down to our adversaries. I look forward to working with Marco to make America and the world safe and great again." End quote. We're looking forward to it too, Mr. Trump. We truly are. We're also looking forward to Special Counsel Jack Smith's looming resignation, as well as the resignation of several other people with whom he has worked in recent years. According to the New York Times, Smith plans to finish his work and leave his post before Trump can fire him. And that right there says everything about his bogus prosecutions against the incoming commander-in-chief. Joining us now to discuss is Republican Congressman Bob Good, the U.S. representative of Virginia's 5th Congressional District. Congressman Good, thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you, Riley. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. So I'd like to start with the Jack Smith news. What do you make about that?
Well, I'm disappointed, as perhaps you and some others are, that President Trump will not have the opportunity to fire Jack Smith. Jack Smith has been at the tip of the spear of Merrick Garland's Department of Injustice, and it's terrible, terrible abuse of power, as you noted in your monologue, the weaponization of this agency and this department against political enemies, whether it's the prosecution of President Trump and his supporters, his allies, so many of those, whether it's the raids on the homes or the offices of these individuals, 30 FBI agents in tactical gear in the wee hours of the morning dragging President Trump's supporters out of their homes in their pajamas, or whether it's targeting those who practice their faith or those who protest abortion or those who show up to defend their children at school board meetings, or those who are responsible for the unjust assault on January 6th. Protesters, patriots who went to petition their government with their grievances and have been rotting in jails and prisons ever since and been charged with minor crimes with maximum sentences or denied due process, suffered cruel and unusual punishment, and denied their right to a speedy trial and those sorts of things. Thankfully, that is all coming to an end, and Matt Gaetz is an excellent choice by President Trump to lead that Department of Injustice, which will be a new, again, Department of Justice with him as the Attorney General. As you know, Matt is one of our most talented, most courageous, most capable and competent, most aggressive members of Congress, and he's just the kind of person to right the ship for that office.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I mean, you need somebody tenacious after everything that we've seen, after all the things that you just laid out. It's a complete corruption of law and order in this country. And if we don't have that, we're not going to have a country at all. So I think the importance here is it's something that we just can't waste this moment. We just had this is the biggest election win for Republicans in 36 years. And it would just be a shame to see that go to waste, I guess is really what I'm trying to say. So I'm glad to see that President Trump is picking a lot of people who will go on offense, people who are going to right the ship. And when it comes to the DOJ, we can do so much better. And I'm not trying to, paint the whole department and everybody in it as some nefarious bad actor, but what we've seen, especially from this current AG, needs to be addressed, and we need to get to some real justice for a lot of Americans that have been overcharged or abused in one way or another. So I am very glad to see that, just like you. And I guess we'll see what happens as well with Jack Smith, because I don't know what we could expect to see in the future, but I do wonder if there might be some kind of investigation, some kind of inquiry. People are saying he might be called before Congress to testify. What do you think about that?
Well, I hope that does happen. And Matt, again, to become capable and ready for this job, as you noted earlier, he served on the Judiciary Committee, which has oversight of this department. Yes. Perhaps Matt Gaetz will be the person who will be able to fire Christopher Wray. Certainly, he'll be the one who will begin to bring accountability to this Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. And it's interesting, by the way, that some of these Republicans revealing the problems within the Republican Party, revealing the problems with the swamp and the deep state, if you will. Some Republicans on the Senate expressing, concerns about confirming Matt Gaetz. These same Republicans who are expressing the concern voted to confirm Merrick Garland, voted to confirm the person who is responsible for empowering Jack Smith to do all of the terrible things that he's been doing. And, there's nothing, we've got 800,000 police officers in this country, law enforcement officers, most, 99% of which are doing a wonderful job trying to serve their communities, putting their lives on the line. But nothing's worse than a bad cop. Somebody who's abusing that power in a wicked way and harming those who they're sworn to defend. And certainly that starts at the top with the the Department of Injustice, again, under Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray and what they've done. And so I'm very excited with President Trump's appointment. I hope the Senate will confirm him quickly when the time comes. And I hope Matt Gaetz will be on the job doing what he needs to do for the American people.
Absolutely. I certainly hope so as well. And on this note of other appointments, I'd like to ask you about some of the other recent picks coming from this incoming administration. What do you make about Tulsi Gabbard being the head of the DNI? I mean, do you think that's a smart move?
Well, I don't know Tulsi as well, so I don't have the thoughts that I would have on Matt Gaetz. I do think that President Trump certainly is making a statement that he is not hiring or appointing the typical kind of folks that served him poorly in his first administration and he's willing to what he thinks is right and what he thinks is best, irrespective of the criticism that he might receive, whether that's unconventional picks like Gaetz, who's got great military experience. He's obviously worked in veterans organizations, but he is not the typical kind of person from a resume standpoint that you put SecDev. But obviously, we don't need to have those same kind of generals who failed us in the past rising to the ranks politically to serve in a position that failed President Trump in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with a lot of those types, what we're really learning right now is that there are a lot of people in D.C. who care more about maybe posturing themselves or positioning themselves for a future run for a different office than really just getting the job done. Because, and it's ironic, right? Because if you just fulfill the mandate and do your job and serve the American people, then your job security, I think, will be locked in. The proof is in the pudding there. And that's what we're seeing with Trump, right? I mean, he was a known quantity in this race, basically running as an incumbent in that sense, just because we've seen what a Trump presidency looks like. However, we haven't seen him really escalate things with the deep state as much as he is right now, which is what I love to see. I think he's preparing for a big battle with the swamp, and it's not going to be easy either. So I think Republicans need to be ready here for a bit of a brawl, a bit of a fight, because the Democrat Party is not just going to roll over and let Trump advance his agenda willy-nilly. They are going to try to stonewall him or slow roll it or try some other dirty trick just to undermine him and undercut him. And like you said earlier, undercut those around him. And I think they're gonna try to infiltrate that next Congress in any way that they can. But while we're talking about Congress as well, there is an ongoing negotiation over the next budget to fund the government. I'd like to ask you about how that's going and what you think of it.
Well, Speaker Johnson was nominated again to be the speaker in the Republican conference yesterday. But I think that his fate on January 3 will be determined by how he does with managing our debt situation. Frankly, we ought to be willing just to shut the government down for a couple of weeks, if necessary, rather than do something that further harms the American people, that harms the start of the Trump presidency, that takes away the ability of the American people's will, as reflected on November 5 when they entrusted full control of the government to Republicans. We ought not to fund the government with the same policies and the same spending levels that are bankrupting the country, let alone, that would be a CR, a long-term CR. I don't think that would be a good thing. We ought to have a short-term funding, if any. We certainly ought not to do an omnibus or a couple of minibuses or anything that adds year-end pork barrel spending, year-end increases, Christmas tree spending for outgoing members, the Democrats getting one last shot while they control the Senate and the White House. And so Speaker Johnson, I think, his fate as Speaker on January 3rd will rest with how he handles the funding of the government at the end of this year.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not sure if there's going to be, I mean, it'll be interesting, right? Because we have this whole new government agency as well about maximizing efficiency and cutting reckless spending and cutting waste. So I have really high hopes that we can get back to sensible government spending here, cut the pointless regulations, lower taxes for people, bring down inflation, those interest rates, and really just get back to a fiscally responsible government, which shouldn't even be a partisan issue in my opinion. That should just be the basics of running a country responsibly. So it would be nice to get back to that. And I do have one other question for you as well, because now we have a majority in the House and the Senate. So I want to ask you, Congressman, where do you think Republicans should start when it comes to advancing the MAGA mandate? The economy, the border, foreign policy? I mean, where do you think we should put our energy first?
Well, I'll add to what you said a moment ago. Very excited about people who are not beholden to anyone else, Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk having that opportunity, because everybody knows what we need to do it, but it takes the courage to do it. Yes. And no one, or very few in Congress, I should say, the Freedom Caucus has, but very few others have shown the resolve to do it. But now Republicans will have no one else to blame. We've got 53 in the Senate. We're going to have 221, 222 or so in the House. And, of course, we've got the White House with President Trump. So Republicans must meet the moment. They must rise to the occasion. Speaker Johnson and John Thune have to be strong, courageous leaders that tell Republicans what they must do or else. We can't be catering to the rhinos, the establishment, the moderates, and allowing them to derail the Trump agenda. I think it's got to begin with the border. That's an existential threat to the country. The president obviously largely ran on that. It's got to be the spending that's causing so much inflationary harm and that's heading us off the cliff of a fiscal crisis, of course. It's got to be the energy again, and it's got to be taken on the bureaucratic state, which is the deep state that we've been talking about, the Department of Injustice, as we've been talking about, but also the bureaucrats that are resisted President Trump's agenda in his first term. I think he's going to be much better positioned and equipped to deal with that. There's a move to try to make more of them those who can be replaced when there's a change in administration, to make sure we have people in leadership on a much broader level than just 4,000 who support and will work with the president's agenda.
I just love that so much. There's a lot of work to be done, but I have really, really high hopes that we can get this country back on the right track. And by the way, all Americans are going to benefit from that. Even people that voted against Trump, we're all going to benefit from more efficiency, less waste, secure borders, ending these wars, sensible spending. So I am just over the moon about what's to come for this country. And of course, as always, Congressman, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Great to be with you.